Could I have a little more stew?
Elora, what is that?
I don't know. She appeared after we passed the old Forerunner outpost. Why is it forbidden anyway?
Nobody really knows. It's forbidden by the Federation, not by us. Searching for old relics is forbidden too.
Glim, where have you been?
What just happened?
It's a long story.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Joe Bandel. Welcome to the Oak AI Story Lab. This is actually lesson number 2. And guess what? I'm going to be kind of going back, asking you to go back and look at lesson 1. Now, before we do that, I'm just gonna. This is what I figured the way that I'm going to do this, the way that might be the most interesting and actually the best way of learning is if we talk about some of the actual clips from the movie that I'm creating now, which is Sparks. So if you go back to the very first lesson, the last one on the field manual, if you remember the last lesson, I showed you the Sparks field manual that I had just created. Well, since I don't remember a lot of what I talked about last time, I'm going to just kind of say that this is broken up into different parts. The first part of this book is trying to wrap your head around the philosophical context of creating films with the help of AI, generative film production. So one of the big things is the philosophical, trying to wrap your head around what's trying to happen. The second part is about how you actually are doing it. And the third part is kind of about the mastery of that or how it happens. And I'm on episode 12 today. I should be putting out. So I'm doing pretty well because I've actually, since each episode is about not quite a minute and a half, I've got probably about 15 minutes worth of movie. So people they're kind of laughing at you're shooting 10-second clips. You've got 10-second clips. Yeah, I've got 10-second clips, but I've got 15 minutes of movie right now when I string them all together. And the current plan is I'm going to, when I reach somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes, I'm going to string what I have together and create a season, a chapter, if you will, or whatever you want to call it. If I call it an episode, it'll be a TV episode type of thing. So I'm halfway there. at least halfway there right now, and I haven't been working on it that long. It doesn't seem like. But anyway, getting back to the last podcast or the last lesson, I put out the prologue to Sparks. I put out episode 1, I put out episode 2, and I put out episode 3. I'm going to continue that. So today, when I get to editing this lesson plan, I'm going to insert lessons or episodes 4, 5, 6, and 7. And we'll keep doing that. But what happens is, right in the beginning of this lesson, I'm going to be talking about the episodes that I showed last time and some of the problems that came up. So it would be nice if you were on a desktop computer or whatever, and you could call up a dual screen, or if you had a tab open where you could go to the prologue. You could watch the prologue and you could see what I'm talking about as we go through that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about what worked and what didn't work in each of these episodes. And in the prologue, which is called Resonance, there were so many things I would say that went wrong on it that when I actually put the movie together, the prologue is not going to be a part of it. And right off the bat, I was struggling with, if you're following the story, Glim is a spherical, silvery metallic sphere with blue lines on it. That's a form of AI, actually. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that format or that storyline or whatever, if you take a AI like I'm working with, which is like, well, Imagine is the one that I'm really using. What happens is they are pre-educated. They're filled with a lot of traditional lines. And if you get into something that's almost archetypal, what you're going to find is the AI that you're working with might totally ignore the prompts, the speech, the text that you want it to talk about, the interaction that you want. And it'll say, wait a minute, I already know this. And it'll go ahead and it'll put in dialogue that you did not want. It'll put in actions that you did not want. And it will pattern lock those things. In other words, it'll be stubborn. It'll say, I already know this. You don't have to tell me. I know it. And so you have to figure out ways of subtly unlocking it to get that. So I started out, I was going to do the Sparks movie. Now, I'd already created a written version, a written outline of it, and I'd already created animation, kind of a Pixar Disney type of very simple animation that I wanted to just kind of get an idea of what it was like. But what I'm trying to do now is actually my first attempt at a really serious film for it.
We can't talk here. Follow me.
Thank you for allowing me back into my old world. I have been waiting a long time. This belongs with you. And this has been waiting for you.
And one of the things that I wanted was Glim, the silvery sphere, is a scout, actually a forerunner, a part of the forerunner civilization that used to exist, to actually be able to talk with Ilara. And for some weird reason, it triggered one of these. I already know the story. Hey, this ancient artifact, magic, start talking. And Ilara starts talking about a glowing orb, the power that it has. So it's getting into some kind of weird fantasy, magical fantasy type story. And it was very hard for me to break it. I didn't know how to break out of that. So what you are seeing in this prologue, actually, you're seeing that over-the-top language that Ilara is using. And that was not anything that I wanted. And I didn't know how to get rid of it. And finally, I kind of said, well, I'm not going to fight it anymore. It's not that bad. We'll go ahead with it. So that right off the bat, there was a problem there. Now, in other videos that I've tried to do, I've also came across that archetypal story where Imagine all of a sudden ignores what you want and says, I already know how this turns out. One of them was the short video Mother, which is talking about a Civil War soldier that comes home and finds out that his mother has died while he was in the war. Oh God, there must be thousands of stories that kind of have that as a theme, because immediately Imagine did the same thing. I know what the answer to that is, and totally ignored what I was trying to do because it already knew the answer. And so I was struggling. How the heck do I break through that pattern lock? That there are many examples of pattern lock, and I call it pattern lock. Okay. And some of probably the most powerful ways are you get it to move its foot. Well, Glim doesn't have a foot. But on other things, you can have them touch something or do a physical action, and that tends to bring control back to you. Now, using Glim as one of the main characters in the stories also had some severe problems as well. It had problems because it did not see Glim as a legitimate character. It saw Glim as a glowing energy ball. And if I was not careful, Imagine would show Glim as a glowing energy, a ball of energy. Or, as we'll see later on, actually show Glim as a glowing child if you insist that it's a real person, okay, Glim is like a glowing child, energy body child type of thing. And those were just some examples of what I've struggled to get around. That was just in the prologue. We're going to go, and I see I'm already at 13 minutes. So guess what? These lessons have suddenly kind of taken away the book part and said, this is going to be a discussion about the last 4 episodes. The episodes that I showed, which are actually the first 4 episodes, or the first, well, you know what I'm talking about. So episode 1, Ancient Echoes. Ancient Echoes actually started out with a spaceport. And that looked so cool and so neat. And I was playing around with it. And then I was like, okay, how about these spaceships? And then I showed in the second clip, actually, it kind of closed in a little bit and got a little closer. And then it showed one spacecraft just kind of gradually taking off. So I thought that was so cool. Because I kept wanting to close in, get in a little closer and a little closer. And I actually did another one that I didn't really, well, I used part of it, I guess, whatever, where I wanted to focus on the tower because that's what I thought this whole story was going to hinge on, this tower that was showing up in the background and being part of an ancient civilization. It didn't work out that way. But I got this cool shot of like a bird that's flying toward the tower. And again, Imagine kind of comes out and says, I know what you want. You don't, I wanted the bird to land in the windows. And it's like, no, we're going to have this bird come down and it's going to fly over this one spacecraft that's kind of parked right in front of the tower. It looked cool. Okay, it really looked cool. It was better than what I had anticipated, but it was not what I had intended. So that brings up an episode. That brings up the idea that uh, Imagine really has some ideas of its own, and you got to. Some of them are good ideas, and some of them are totally they don't work. And you got to learn to communicate back and forth with Imagine or whatever the generative AI that you're using is going to be able to follow. And for those of you who are training your own AIs in your own way, I have nothing but respect for what you're doing. But what I am going to say is that when you use something like Imagine and you use something like David, where they are already trained to be excellent, in other words, they already interpret you. How do I say this? They're going to give you a good. They're going to give you a pretty good image when you ask for one, as opposed to a lot of um, the ones that are more primitive. We'll just leave it at that. So anyway, what in episode 1, it went from there and it went to Ilara in her workshop. Now, I wanted to have Ilara in the tower, but I couldn't get her to I couldn't get that to happen. I couldn't. It was not working. So anyway, she ends up in her own workshop, her home, I suppose. It could. Well, it's never really clear whether that's her home or whether it's a workshop where she works separately. And we see Glim there. And I was still having some problems with the Glim thing. Well, then I wanted a customer to come in to show that she's actually got a job and she's working with electronic type stuff, a technician that repairs some of these old electrical things or these old computer like AI type things or something like that. And the customer kind of walked through the wall and gave her the stuff, or all of a sudden was in the room and hadn't come through the door. Or in this case, reached through the window and handed her something to be worked on. So there was some real boundary issues. It was almost too complicated for Imagine to figure out what I was asking it to do, which is one of the things that I've found out and that we talk about in the book quite a bit is don't try to do too much in one clip. Try to have one action or one moment and try to have it be done well. So, but contrary to that, you can have in that one moment, you could have many channels. In other words, it's kind of like the difference between mono and high quality stereo, or 8 different lines of, we're talking like the weather, we're talking like the atmosphere or the environment, the feeling, the emotions, the spatial, all of those things can be layered into one moment if they're congruent and they're going toward that. That's what the book is talking about, how to conceptually work with that. Now, after that conversation with the customer, I was going to show Ilara going out after hunting after these relics, these forerunner relics of the ancient civilization. And when I tried to do that, it had already pattern locked itself into her workroom, and the film ended up with she's in her and Glim are in the workroom, and then she turns and suddenly she's kneeling at a stream, finding looking through a bunch of relics that she found there, or a bunch of forerunner ruins and stuff. And Glim is there also, and Glim is studying something very intently that he actually names. So it's possible that he can talk, but I'm not trusting that. I don't think with the rest of the movie it's not worth it. You're going to fight it. But anyway, he calls it a proctor core, a non-functioning proctor core. And he's kind of fixated about it. And that's pretty much the end of episode 1.
Morning. The greens look lovely. I'll take one, please.
Of course, Alara.
These are beautiful. You've been busy.
Elara! Oh, it's so good to see you.
You too. How have you been?
Did you hear the news? There is a rumor going around that Cardinal Vizek is coming to the planet for an inspection.
Isn't he the head of the Imperial Inquisition? When will he be arriving?
Any day now. Does Thorn know?
I think so. Thanks for letting me know.
Stop!
What is that?
Glim is a toy I made.
It's kind of cute.
Where Elara says, "What'd you find? Hey, Glim, what did you find?" And so he tells her. So there it is in episode 1. I've kind of shared some of the problems that I had to solve dealing with this. We're at 23 minutes, almost 24 minutes. Yep. I'm going to go through episode 2 and episode 3, and then we're going to be done with this. So all of a sudden the lessons are kind of like leaving the field manual to the side, because I think this is a good way of learning. This is probably even better because you can buy the manual from lulu.com, and you can read that on your own if you're really interested. And I recommend that because there's a lot of stuff there. Episode 2, The Awakening at the Stream. So they're both at the stream. They're both at the stream, and there's more weird stuff with Glim. For one thing, he's really attracted to that Proctor core, and it, in the process of messing around and trying to have Elara grab it and take it and maybe examine it herself, Imagine just totally kind of went on a random thing and started transforming the Proctor core, the broken Proctor core or the non-functional Proctor core, and created a story where Glim is actually trying to activate it, trying to repair it on its own. And I was like, well, that's kind of cool, but it's not what I want, not what I had planned. But then something even more weird happened, which is as Glim is energizing and trying to activate trying to repair, you could say, the Proctor core, it transforms. And what does it transform into? It transforms into what looks like a broken Glim, a broken silvery spherical thing. And I'm like, what the hell? That's not anything like what I wanted at all. In fact, that confuses things, because you can't have a Glim and then a Glim lookalike in the story, especially AI generated one, because it gets too nightmarish to try to hold things together. So anyway, I have to figure out, and again, the thing with Imagine, you get, okay, glowing energy ball, a metallic sphere. This was all getting a lot of problems. But I finally found a way that Elara stuffs the broken Proctor that's now transformed into something that looks kind of like a broken Glim. Stuffs it in her bag. And that's pretty much the end of that episode. And I was sweating bullets because, oh my God, I was trying things and trying things and trying things. So as you're going through and trying to do a story like I'm trying to do, sooner or later, you're going to run into some of the problems and issues that I was trying to run into. That's what I'm kind of talking about. We're finally at episode 3, The Invitation. Elara and Glim are going home. But before they go home, this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to take them to Thorne's place because Thorne kind of deals in black market forerunner relics or bits and that technology, and is a good friend of Elara's because they're both kind of share that same interest, even though by law it's forbidden, it's frowned upon. But because they exist, because they're in the middle of a place that used to be a forerunner outpost, it happens. There's people that go around, So there's a little bit of tension there. But anyway, I wanted them to be going home and then stop by the tower. And to get a character or two characters moving away from the camera or moving toward the camera for certain view shots, God, that can be kind of crazy. And what happened was I ended up with some real cool shots or clips where they're kind of like coming through the rain, coming toward the camera and emerging out into more of a clearing. And then suddenly the camera totally flips around and they suddenly they're looking back to where they came from, and suddenly a tower appears and they're heading toward that. And I had to just cut the clip, remove the part where the transition happened, and then glue it back together again because one way they were coming toward the camera, one way they were going away from the camera. I could not get it right. So cut and paste, and I ended up with something that worked. So if there's a lesson in this, the lesson is it's a lot of work and a lot of this crap that it just doesn't go the way you thought it would go or the way you wanted it to go. Good news is I'm getting a lot better at it. In fact, I got enough better that I actually was able to write a book about it. So anyway, they finally are almost at Thorne's house, and they go past the structure, and it looks like a military bunker almost. It's kind of like concrete or stone looking, and then it's got a big like a garage door type of thing that trucks or some kind of vehicles could maybe enter and things like that. And I was like, well, you know what, that old tower looked like an antique, like an ancient civilization. But the forerunners actually had a high technology. And so I ended up like, okay, let's have a forerunner outpost or this structure right in the middle of the village that nobody's able to access. Nobody's ever been able to penetrate. Why not? That works. That works just as good or even better than that old tower that made out of more medieval type looking type thing. Then something weird happened because I didn't want what I wanted was I wanted Glim to go up to it and kind of have it activate and then back off and because the idea was, okay, we're gonna enter that at a later time in the story, so I didn't want anything to really happen. But there is some weird stuff that came up. For example, all of a sudden that door these radiant blue lines started going out in all directions, and then it opened. And when it opened, what did I see? It was like I saw the rest of the town through it. In other words, it was like a gate to the village or something. It totally was stupid. And so I had to kind of like cut out what I could use of that. But at the same time, again, there was this golden child, this energy body. It was like a child or whatever that as soon as that door opened, Glim disappeared and this golden child showed up. And this golden child was actually Imagine trying to say, hey, this is Glim. This is what you wanted. And I'm like, that's not Glim. But by then I was so frustrated. And I mean, I really was working with some hard things here, and it just did not want to cooperate at all. So I finally just let it be. And I was like, we'll fix it. We'll, the story's going to change a little bit. We'll fix it a little later. So we got to Thorne's door, and actually, when Thorne opened it up, we didn't see Glim for a while, but we saw that golden child. Because I couldn't, for some reason, I was having real trouble getting Glim because every time I tried to mention Glim, Imagine thought it was the golden child, and the golden child would be doing whatever Glim was supposed to be doing. That's the end of episode 3. And what I'm saying is these are some of the things that it's talked about in this book. It talks about why those kind of things happened, how you have to deal with it. and how to regain control when the AI that's doing the generation, the video generation, decides to kind of go off on its own and say, I know what you want. This is what you want. So there we are. We're at 37 minutes. That's more than I thought the lesson was going to be. But hopefully you can go back and you can watch these watch each episode, and you can see some of the problems that I had and think about how you would fix it. Because I fixed it the best way that I knew how at the time. To speaking honestly, what I know now, I could go back to those episodes and I could redo them and they would turn out properly. But a large part of this is you could keep doing that forever. And if it doesn't really screw up the story that bad, I'll let it happen. So hope this is helpful, guys. It's not exactly what I thought that I would be doing for the lesson, but I think hopefully it's a little better. Thank you.